we're exploring the idea that failure isn't fatal. And one of the big dynamics of this is that when we fail at something, we tend to view ourselves as a failure, or many of us do. At least that's something that I have struggled with, is that I must be a failure, and I own that as sort of an idea about myself. But the reality is that in failure not being fatal for you, that there's an inner dialogue that goes on. There's a conversation that goes on within our own heads about this. What is the conversation? Does the voice sound like within you? I failed at that. I was just listening to some of the interviews from the U.S. Open this last weekend, and the golfers just very honest about how they played, how they putted, how they chipped, how they did different dimensions of their game, and they had to be very honest about that. That I just didn't have it today, and they have to be able to regroup from that in order to be able to pick the clubs up, hit again, and go ahead and go into the next week with an attitude that they're going to give it their best shot. And I think that for a lot of us, what ends up happening is the inner voice of failure can tend to start to infect the different dimensions of our walk with God, of our relationships with others, of us willing to take steps forward and try new things, or maybe refine things that we want to be good at but we're not particularly good at. And that inner voice of failure just sort of has a freezing effect on us and keeps us from walking forward. I want to tell you today that the inner voice of failure is not the final voice, that we need to start digesting what God says about us, that he's the one who said, and Jesus is actually thrilled with you taking steps forward and them not going perfectly, that he's thrilled with the learning process, because the learning process is the process that grows you up. That's where we'll start this morning.